Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this insightful CIO mega panel discussion on business continuity planning and digital business acceleration. After 2020, the digital business landscape changed permanently, forcing many CIOs to adopt more responsibilities, make hard decisions, and ultimately rethink their organization's operating models. With playing critical roles in navigating business continuity challenges during the pandemic, CEOs now have high expectations from CIOs. In today's mega panel, leading CIOs will be sharing insights on how technology leaders can design and deliver effective digital business strategies. Some of the key takeaways from this session would be: what are the blind spots in delivering digital business strategy and how do you identify them? How do you address the obstacles or vulnerabilities of digital business strategy for business continuity? And how can digital accelerate the delivery of customer value? And it is with great pleasure that I invite and introduce our esteemed panelists for this session. First up, we have Byron J. Fernandez, Group CIO and EVP, TDCX Malaysia and India. Byron is an experienced country director with a demonstrated history of working in the outsourcing offshoring industry. He's skilled in service delivery, operations management, customer relationship management, workforce management, and contact centers. Our second speaker for today is Mark Morawski, Chief Technology Officer, VNG. Mark is the Chief Technology Officer at ZalloPay, a product of Xeon JSC, which is part of VNG, where he's responsible for the people, platform, and software that powers the financial services products and services used by millions. He is a highly experienced global technology leader and fintech industry professional, spending over 20 years working on high-scale and digital transformation problems for major Fortune 500 companies. And last but not the least, this session will be moderated by Koo Ping Shung, President and co-founder of AI Professionals Association. Koo's experience spans a wide variety of industries on how data is being used. His experience also spans the data value chain from data collection, data management, and data governance through to implementation. He's an instructor in various institutions such as NUS, SUM, ESSEC, and SAS, and a strong vote of confidence in his knowledge and experience of the field. He's a data science and artificial intelligence advisor to a few companies and has mentored many, helping them in their data science career. So thank you so much for joining us today, Byron, Mark, and Koo. And I'm sure our audience will learn a lot from the insights you would share today. And without any further delay, let me invite Koo to take over and start this exciting discussion. Over to you, Koo.
Great. Thank you very much, Yasmin, for giving us such a good introduction. So we can just head towards the panel immediately. So maybe for the first question, right? Given the two unprecedented years businesses have gone through, right? What are the kind of obstacles or challenges your respective organization have faced, like when it comes to digital business continuity, and how does it shape your organization approach to digital business acceleration? So maybe Mark would like to take this question first.
Yeah, thanks, Koo. So in the fintech space, one of the things that's always top of mind is things like compliance, regulatory needs for the, for your specific areas. For us, we needed to look at a couple different things at ZalloPay. One is we wanted to make sure that the business itself could continue to operate and to operate products and services that would very much be in line with what's needed in the COVID times. So in our case, certain food delivery systems had kind of shut down, right? So how are we working with the supply chain? How did we allow people to execute their payments, right? So we needed to make sure that there were alternative ways and in ways. So things like the donations came up for us, allowing for people to help donate funds to help others out in a very social context, right? That was a key kind of a strategy change for us. Or, things like on the other side is, what about our employees? We had to make sure that our employees were safe. We had to make sure that our employees had tools that they, would be successful, considering that this is not necessarily a culture where work from home was standard. So we really accelerated that. And so collaboration tools, video conferencing, and then focus on the internals of how are we doing business? What are the things that are effective? And how do we need to change those things? We had to change how we operate with one another to get work done and to make sure we didn't just sit in a bunch of meetings and get status checks, right? We needed to make some strong decisions about what was best for our organization.
Okay. How about you, Byron?
Well, Koo, for TDCX, we're a digital customer experience provider to some of the world's most well-known and well-loved digital brands. Being that the nature of our business is extremely diverse, what we got to see over the past 2 years was a shift in the way our clients did things. So customer experience and elevating customer experience has always been one of the top drivers for implementing technology, for making sure that, business continuity was in place. But in the past, we had hurdles that were created largely by our own clients or by ourselves, where we're very cautious with how we implement technology. We're always worried, what can go wrong? And then you try not to change as much as you can just because things are working now. And I think that's what really shattered 2 years ago, because I think businesses were forced to embrace that transformation and make those changes. And what we did was we were able to get a lot of our customers, instead of saying no to the things that we were suggesting, this time suddenly it would be, yes, why not? Because some of the things that we did suggest were things that we had planned years in advance about moving people into working from home when they perform some of these customer experience duties. And what I'd see now, and what's changed over the course of that 2-year period, is we're now no longer unprecedented. We use the word unprecedented a lot. What happened 2 years ago, but it's not unprecedented anymore. Now it's bread and butter. Now it's expectation. And how do we continue to deliver on that expectation and exceed it now that the whole, the newness of a pandemic has completely worn off? Yeah.
Great. So what I'm hearing from you is there are so many stakeholders now actually in to manage them. Like for instance, there's of course the customers, there's also the processors, that last but not least also the employees also come into the equation as well. How do we help them to work through the pandemic, especially now we can't sort of meet physically face to face and all this. We'll come to the employee question in a while, but let's talk a bit more about technology, given the digital transformation that's happening right now and all this, right? How do you see the role of CIO has evolved during the pandemic? So maybe Byron would like to start first.
Okay, sure. It's not evolved. It's doubled or tripled over the course of this time, Koo. In the past, Mark and I would be focused on things like, compliance, making sure that our data security is in place, making sure that our IT service management was up to scratch, looking at our software development and making sure all of these pillars of IT are functioning the way they should. And then while making sure that we're supporting a lot of the regulatory requirements, especially for Mark's business, I can imagine there'll be a lot more work done in that area. What's happened now is we're being asked to partner with the business and think, what are things we can do, technologies we can implement to make lives easier for people? Now the question being asked by CEOs is, employees don't like doing this. Is there any way you can automate it, take it away from them? Clients are complaining that there is this thing that we need to do. We don't like it. Is there any way you could take that away? Can we demise some of these jobs, kill them off using machine learning or using other technology platforms that can take these things away and enable people to do things that are more meaningful for them? So what I find now is, besides running the IT organization, which Mark and I have always had to do, we're now partnering the business to think of innovative ways on how we can actually help the business move forward and transform and change during these times where so much has already changed over the last 24 months. Hope that makes sense, Koo.
Yeah, it does. It does. How about you, Mark? How do you see this?
Yeah, I think the word transformation, right? I call CIO now transformation artist. Because at the end of the day, nothing really stays the same, right? Like if you think about it, our jobs and the jobs of the teams that we run, we're change managers, right? Like we're instituting change. And with the pace of change, with what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the overall environment, like it's not good enough just to say, systems are up and operational, my ERP platform's in place, this project's good, the status check things. You really have to be leading the business, right? You need to be at the forefront of where your customers are heading and you need to be really a strong partner with the business. Can remember a number of conversations where, in the middle of all these changes, the business is a little bit flustered, right? Like, what are we going to do? And what happens is people tend to get more tactical. Like, what can I control? What's in front of me right now? And I believe it's our job, Byron and myself and others in this industry, it's our job to really look at what tools are available, what technologies are there in support of this, and how can we actually take a step, 2 steps forward instead of just the tactics of the day, right? And I think that's the big difference maker for what we're talking about when we see digital transformation, just because the pace is so fast.
Yeah. Oh, so it becomes quite challenging also, right? I mean, given the fact that now you have to look through so many software, so many options and all this, I think that will be one. And also the integration of all these different softwares and all this could be a bigger challenge and all this. So maybe to add on to that, maybe Mark or Byron, can you all share like what are some of the probably pointers or guidelines that you think about in terms of like designing the processes and putting the tools and software together on the processes and all this? Maybe Mark would like to go first.
Yeah, so I mean, so I think what you're asking for is tool selection and integration and how to deal with that, right? I think, just like any good IT shop, I think many of us sit down and think about, what does our strategy look like? What does the business IT strategy look like? And then really understanding that first, right? Really understanding where the business is heading allows us to make, the right decisions, because in some cases, somebody might have, just went to their local vendor and came up with some great solutions. Say, hey, can we do this? And, sometimes you have to rein people in and say, that might not be the right thing for us right now, but what about this, right? What about taking a step into, everybody talks about AI, I think is a great example, right? And obviously, Koo, you get the AI Professionals Association. But what's the practical side of it, right? What is something we can do right now with machine learning? It kind of feels like AI, but it's not exactly AI in the sense of, right, the big picture.
Yes.
So I think one is that understanding the business context very well. 2, you got to know where your team is and where your team's going. A lot of the decisions that are made in our organization primarily have to deal with what skills do I have in front of me, and where is my team leaning and learning, right? We have this idea of 10% time and everybody's learning these new technologies, but at the end of the day, how effective can I be if every single thing is custom all the time, right? And so we start to make some decisions about maybe limiting certain technology, but also expanding, R&D and innovation. So, it's really a juggling act, right? I don't know that there's a perfect answer, but you do have to have the business context. You got to know where your team is going. And then I think ultimately it's, having some good partnerships out there to help you connect in areas that maybe you can't go as fast and far. Right? I think those are the 3 things that I lean on.
Okay, great. Byron?
Yeah, cool. Mark's made some incredible points there, some of which I'd like to add to or elaborate on. I think one of the biggest mistakes people are making today is they're taking their processes as they are right now and trying to make those processes force fit into this new sort of digital way of doing things. And the problem with that is a lot of IT professionals, we're building out software, we're building out things to kind of match processes that are suboptimal, processes that should not be performed the way they're being performed now, processes that can be automated away, some of those. And I think one of the biggest pitfalls of businesses at this very point in time is the business will just think, okay, this is how we've done it in the past. Let's continue to do it that way, and let's just move it from the way it was to something digital. And that's one of the things you want to avoid doing, really, really avoid doing. Start with questioning yourself, question the business. Is this the right way to do it? Is there a better way to do it? How are other people doing it? And then you'll start to see that there's probably a perspective that the business may not have had in the first place. And that's when you start to look at some of the new age tools that are out there and realize that they can do things and that they do things maybe a little bit differently than you're used to, but would result in a step gain where the business is concerned, one that they probably never even imagined. And that's one of the things that I'm seeing personally right now. The other thing that we're seeing is that, again, Mark makes this great point. What do you have now? Where's your team now? And where do you want to go? That raises some of the other challenges that we're facing. And the big one being talent. Yes. Where are we now? Where we're at with talent that knows technology that we've been using for a long time in the past. And we've got to kind of transform some of that. We've got to take a lot of IT professionals are going to take a lot more of a consultative approach, understanding what the business needs. And you'll start to realize this is a skill set that isn't as prevalent as it needs to be. And from a technology perspective, some of the development tools that are being used now that are important now are tools that are new age. And there isn't a whole lot of people who are out there in the market with those kinds of skills. So those 2 points were really, really great points, Mark. Thank you for that. And the way I see it in a very practical sense happening in those 2 dimensions that I just spoke about.
Yeah, you're right, Byron. And Mark, I agree with what you all have mentioned before, especially I think on the part about value. At the end of the day, we are actually using technology to provide better values to our stakeholders. And that's that. So Byron also pointed out about the talent side as well. And we all know that talents are very, very difficult to find these days, especially the very good ones, right? And both of you are nodding your head. Yeah. So another thing is also, Byron, what you mentioned, I like a lot about, and that is, hey, I think we should look at our processes again and not adding digitalization to the processes, but rather look through the whole process and see that, hey, if we now have all these digitization tools, right, how can we turn that process up and not really adding digitization to the existing process rather? That's a very good point, Byron. Yeah. So maybe let's continue on this topic about technology into processes and all this. So can you share with the audiences, right, like what are some of the challenges you all have, right, faced in building strategies, given the fact now that organizations also have to work in a hybrid and a remote model? So maybe Byron would like to take this first.
So the challenges are many, and they're multidimensional, and they're manifold. If I start with, and IT people always think in terms of people, process, and then system. If I start with the people side of things, I think it's, first of all, user education. Having users understand what it means to be working in a hybrid, home and office environment. Now, we might certify your home internet connection as something that you could use to access your office tools. That does not mean that the local Starbucks near your house is also certified for connection into the office. Because, when you look at the people side of things, there's a lot of education that needs to happen. And perhaps we as IT professionals were a little bit remiss about it, because when it was in an office environment, we had control of that environment. Now there's some aspects of it that are harder for us to control. And the only way we can do this is if the users partner with us and work with us in order to allow for some of these controls to be put in place. And it's kind of the first side of things that I'm seeing. We'll also need the users to do a lot more. In a pandemic situation where we're not able to let you into the office, it also means we can't go to your house. What happens when equipment gets shipped out to users? They're going to have to learn how to set up some of that. They're going to have to learn how to connect some of those things up. And I think this has been quite a big change from a people perspective, right? And that's some of the challenges that we're dealing with, just really at a frontline people level. And then when you look at a process level, the tools to support these processes, to be honest, they've been there for quite a long time. Microsoft Teams was a great collaboration tool that's not new. Neither is Zoom, neither are any of the tools that we're using now for collaboration. They've been there a while. But our processes have never been designed to allow for them to work that way. It's only because we were forced into the situation now through the pandemic that people are sharing screens, recording meetings, doing reviews after meetings are over, recording sessions that you could look at in your own time later. Processes have had to change to cope with those things as well. And that's one of the things that we've seen. So what does that place on us as IT professionals? Storage. I mean, things as simple as, look, you're recording a lot more stuff than you were doing in the past. Do we have the capacity for that? Do we have the bandwidth for that? Do we have the kind of, things as simple as you set up a firewall. Previously, you don't need a physical authenticator. Suddenly you do. Multi-factor authentication using multiple devices, mobile device management systems. All of these things suddenly become front and center. They're very important because the processes have changed. And of course, that impacts as well the kind of technology that we deploy. So if you ask me, the challenges are really, really, they're manifold, they're everywhere, and they're in all three of these dimensions. Sorry, I've taken a bit long to answer that one, but it was a big question, Koo.
It is. I don't deny that. And I think, Byron, you also, so there's also the security and privacy part as well, given the fact that you're handling, given the fact that now your employees are all over the place and they may not be using VPN when they're designated to, and like what you mentioned just now about working at Starbucks and all, where there's no control over the security and privacy, that itself is also quite a fair bit of challenge, right, Byron? Yep. So over to you, Mark.
Yeah, I think Byron hit it on the head. I mean, this is definitely a multifaceted problem. I'll work backwards and just add a couple of points, from systems, process to people. The story that I have is we actually had a lot of physical servers still in running our platform, and some of that has to do with the compliance and regulatory of Vietnam and how you have to deal with data. But actually, the good thing is we got to use this as a impetus to push more into the public cloud, which I thought was great. So I think of this as like little wins, right? Like, oh, this forced us to do this. There was no option to receive infrastructure, rack, stack, and cable. The business would have been out, right? So we really had to get a chance to push that agenda, which I think has been very helpful for us, and showed that we actually can do some of the things that maybe people felt hesitant to do in a high regulatory environment. From a process standpoint, Zalopy is a product company, so we're developing products and services. But the way that we started to manage things is a little different, right? This idea of objectives and key results, right? Like, let's not tell the team, hey, I want you to cross the river. Whether you build a boat, a bridge, a plane, or you swim, I don't know that I care, right? Like, and I don't need to sit in status meetings for you to tell me, exactly where things are at, because I have tools that, can easily track the progress of things. And if I have questions, there's a lot of asynchronous communication through these tools like MS Teams and that Byron talked about. So it changed how you managed. It changed how you engage with your team. So, the managers, the leaders of the organization really had to rethink, how do I engage with a team in a virtual sense, keep them, continuously engaged and happy and driving, but yet not, micromanage and things like that. So I think it helped to again, break that model. And then ultimately the people, in our environment in Vietnam, there wasn't a lot of working from home. That wasn't a normal thing. And, many people did not have their offices set up, like where I'm sitting at right now at the moment in the US. I have a home office and I've been working from home for many years, and these things are easy, but when we're in Vietnam, not as easy. So teams had to get used to it. You really had to get used to, children on the Zoom calls and things like that, but you needed to make sure they understood it's okay. Right? We understand it's okay to have your kids sitting on a call with you on Zoom, right? Like, we're all going to do it and that kind of thing. So, or flexibility. This isn't just a 9 to 5 kind of job, right? If you are more effective 2 to 10 or something like that, right? As an engineer, go for it, right? I don't want to care about your working hours, right? So we started to, I think, flex in those areas so that the people started to become at the center of, hey, we understand, right? There's empathy in this engagement. And I think those things are really very helpful, especially given, the talent shortage and everything. You really have to be open to people's working models and engage them in a very modern way. So that's how we tackled it.
Well, Mark, I think you foresee the next question I'm going to ask, actually. Okay, so I actually wanted to ask, so coming back, right, we were talking about talents, you're talking about employees and all this, and we also now have this term that is like heard by a lot of C-level executives, and this term is called mass resignation. I don't know whether you all have heard about it, where people are starting to think that, hey, is this the right company I'm working with, and so on and so forth. So the employee engagement starts to become a very important thing. So as a CIO, you all definitely have a sort of a huge responsibility, right, to create a very good digital employee experiences. So maybe can you share with our audiences, right, what are some of the challenges that you faced and how you overcome that? Maybe Mark, would you like to continue with your?
Yeah. This connects. You're right. It's very much so.
Yes.
You know, I think at the end of the day, right, the thing we're actually need to talk about as CIOs, CTOs is this idea of culture, right? You know, you can have the best tools in the world, you can have the best processes, but if you don't have the right culture, you're not really engaging with your employees in a way that they're, you know, one, caring about what they're doing and helping to really be customer focused, right? You know, the speech I always tell my team is, you know, I follow the model of people want mastery, autonomy, and purpose. You may have read this in you know, some of these leadership books, but it's true, right? Like, you know, mastery, you know, from a culture standpoint, engineers, IT people, product people, they want to learn, right? And you need to create space for that. You need to incentivize that through appropriate tooling around learning. So e-learning is a good example of that. You know, we really made a big investment in 2021 in e-learning. It wasn't just go to a class and learn something. It was, hey, there's these great platforms out there that you can engage in. And we started to do that. You know, autonomy, right? Again, it's not about being in the office and you know, being next to somebody so somebody can watch you. These tasks are mostly asynchronous, right? Meaning that people can do them, you know, when it makes sense, as long as, you know, the team, the working agreement of the team is in place. So, you know, really focusing on creating more autonomy and flexibility in that, again, that culture and purpose. You know, I think the thing that I always worry about the most is how do I get 400, 500 people to row in the same direction, right? You know, that's like the hardest problem in every job I've had in this role. And I think ultimately it boils down to, you need everybody to understand the context of what they're doing and the purpose, right? And if you can engage people at the level where they feel passionate about it and they feel like they're making a difference, those things allow, I think, for a good culture. So that now you apply the tools, you apply the processes that we talked about, right? And now you've got something that's magic. You don't have the great resignation of sorts, right? You know, and again, you know, I'm not saying that we're there, right? We're not. We're working towards this, like many organizations, right? So I'll be the first to say we have many challenges there, but these are areas that I think we have to take on as IT leaders in our organizations. So,
great. Thanks, Mark. Byron?
Yeah, I'm just going to pick up exactly where Mark left off. The Great Resignation, we started with that. And, you know, as Mark said, you know, we're not there. I'm not sure anyone is, but what I have noticed and what I've realized is our employees, as long as they know that we're feeling our way through, that we're transforming, that we're changing, that we're adapting as an organization to make them fit in, I think that's winning the battle, because no one has a silver bullet. I'm not sure there ever will be one. But the companies that are willing to make those changes Mark mentioned earlier on, the ones that don't care what time you're working, so long as the delivery is there, the outputs are there. Mark, I'm going to use this one. You know, I don't care how you cross the river. You could fly, you could, you know, swim across it or build a boat. I really like that. I'm going to use that again. And I think it's the companies that make employees know this that are going to win. The ones that are going to understand that working from home and working in this environment means, you know, kids, means managing themselves in a way that they never had to do in the past. And in a way that this pandemic has forced them to. These are the guys that are going to win. These are companies that are going to win. These are the companies people are going to want to work for. And I think that that's the, you know, fundamentally, that's the most important thing. Is the pandemic has sort of forced employers to humanize themselves and understand what it means to be a person, whether you're working from home or whether you're working in the office. And that's a really, really big point. The other thing you asked, Koo, is you asked what the challenges are.
Yeah.
The challenges are not being able to make those changes quickly enough, not being able to communicate those changes quickly enough. And this is something that I think a lot of us do. Yes, we're thinking about it. We're trying to find ways for our employees to work better. Have we even told them? Right? And these things are not, sometimes they're not going to happen in the next hour or so. But communicating that, making sure that your people understand that you're working on it is also very important, and is a step very often missed by many employers. And I think a lot of us have seen some amount of attrition that we could have avoided through better communication of what we're doing. So yeah, I mean, those are the big points I see in some of the things that we're going to do to avoid this great resignation. And I think I'll end with this note for Mark and I. The challenge is even deeper. We're IT professionals. We're not known for the warm and fuzzies. We're the guys that are there in the background. We get it done. We do the work. We're not generally trained in engaging people or communicating or over communicating more with people. It's just not what we do. And I think for us professionals in this industry, that's a challenge that we have to take on at a very personal level to get better at, because it is going to make a massive, massive difference in how we do things moving forward.
Yes, I agree with you, Byron. Communication is going to be very, very, very important soft skills for anyone, especially for IT professionals. Given the fact that we are not known to be fuzzy and warm. That I totally agree. Okay, but let's move on to another. Maybe let's take a different note now. Let's look forward. I think given the fact that we are more or less about to be hopefully out of the pandemic in the next year or so. Maybe can you share with the audiences what are some of the defining tech trends that will impact the market in particular this year? Maybe Byron would like to start first.
Oh yeah, there are quite a lot. This year, I think, is going to be especially important for us. I think the first thing that's coming to those of you who are on a Microsoft environment, Windows 11 is coming. It's going to mean a big thing for us for this year. Other tech trends that we're seeing is, we know that cybercrime is on the rise. We know that the number of breaches, the number of hacks, the number of data security problems we encounter on a daily basis is rising. And I think from a trends perspective, it's going to mean more work done by us. I think our CISOs are going to have a lot more work to do as we exit the pandemic. More and more CIOs are going to be thinking, what their crown jewels are, how they're going to, protect those things. And I see that as something that's, top of mind for many of the CIOs that I speak to. The other thing that's coming out of all of this is, even with the end of the pandemic, we're not going back to the office full time. Yeah. People have got a taste of what it's like to be able to have that balance. I don't think we're ever going to get back to where we were pre-pandemic. And because of that, I think the technologies that we've put in place, some of it we've done, a little bit haphazardly, just quickly to get things working and going, are things that a lot of CIOs are going to formalize, are going to strengthen. Things like, authentication factors, how they're using these things. Connectivity, the demand for connectivity on 5G on the telco industry is going to be immense, in the coming years. For me, these are the things that sort of sit at top of mind. These are some of the trends that I can see will continue for this year.
Mark?
Yeah, in the fintech space, there are a lot of interesting, and I'll call them disruptive technologies. And I'll focus a little bit on essentially what is being deemed as Web 3.0, right? So you've heard the term NFTs. You've seen a video of one of the metaverse. I think there was a retail store recently that produced something like, what would this look like, right? There's a lot of questions in things like that, right? Even the usage of our data, right? Like, what interesting ways can you continue to utilize technology in the space of ML, AI, while you're keeping everything running, and while you're doing the big upgrades, and while you're keeping your eye on version 1.3.2 of this and 2.6.1 of that, right? All those, the typical things you have to deal with. But I think the level of disruption that's happening, right? Like, and it kind of go back to the one question about the role of the CIO. We really do have to figure out at an industry level, right? This idea of how do you innovate in these tech trends, right? And at the same time, keep the business operating so you don't end up in this innovator's dilemma of you don't have time to spend over here in these things because I don't exactly know how to apply them. But over here, I'm making money, or hopefully I'm making money in my current processes. But I think you're going to see a lot of movement in that space, right? The crypto world is still a little crazy, blockchain and all that good stuff. I think the other thing to me is I'm deeming this the year of data personally in our ecosystem. I think the things that we can do with our data is boundless, and I think we're just scratching the surface there, and I'm really excited to see some of the technology that we're applying and how that's gonna help the lives of the Vietnamese citizen doing financial services stuff. So yeah.
Great, that's great, Mark. Oh, glad that you actually pointed out AI and ML. Okay, where my specialty is. But okay, in view of time, right? Let's just do one more questions. And that is, what as per you are the core tenets, right, of a forward-looking, resilient digital strategy? So we probably only have about a minute or so. So maybe Byron would like to take this first.
Well, the core tenets of a digital strategy are starting with don't discount anything. A lot of digital strategy is crafted around a specific preference to technology type or specific deployment kinds. And I would suggest, and I would start by saying, with the incredible amount of technology that's been created over the last 24 months, keep a broad mind. Your digital strategy for 2022 is not the same as the one that you've been working on over the past 5 years. It's going to be very different. Be open to that. Given time, I'm going to stop at that one point because that's top of mind for me.
Great. Thank you very much, Byron. Mark, how about you?
All right. One point as well is just to get to the point here. I think at the end of the day, right, our goal is really to be customer centric. So this customer centricity concept, right, where you really have to define that value stream for that customer, and you whatever technology you bring, the digital technology, right, you bring to bear to solve that. If you really focus on the needs of the customer, I think what you do is you're going to land on the right things to do for them versus just applying a blind technology, or just like Byron said before, taking old processes, making it new, but not actually re-engineering it. Right? You got to start with the customer, and I think the companies that do that well, the companies that are going to win, and I think that's the winning strategy.
Okay, so keep an open mind, be customer centric. These are the 2 points. Great. Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you very much, Byron, for being on the panel. I certainly learned a lot from the both of you. I'm pretty sure the participants and the audience also have learned a lot from your insights as well. Thank you very much, Mark and Byron.
Yeah. Thanks, Koo.
Thank you, Koo.
Over to you, Yasmin.
Thank you, Koo. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Byron. A great discussion. Koo, you moderated it really well. A lot to learn from our CIOs joining us today. The kind of priorities the world is going to focus on going forward when it comes to technology, and how it will impact and transform the workplace going forward. One of the bedrocks of all the transformation we are going through. So thank you so much. Some great insights. And as you said, remain broad-minded and focus on the customer experience. On that note, thank you once again for joining us, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the session. See you for more such exciting sessions all through the day today. So stay tuned.